ERP programs don't usually fail because the vision was wrong. They fail because the business discovers too late that what was built doesn't work the way people actually work. And one of the most expensive decisions an organization still makes is this: we'll test it later. Today on the ERP Perspective, we're talking about why that mindset quietly creates downstream risk, rework, delays, and confidence loss, especially now that cloud ERP updates mean change never stops. This episode is a deep dive into what it really means to go automation first, not as a late-stage safety net, but as a foundation you build before implementation even begins. Carry on through build and configuration, and keep running after go live. Our featured company today is Opkey, a platform focused on helping enterprises de-risk ERP transformations through AI-driven automation across the entire ERP lifecycle, before, during, and after go live. And joining me today is David Zimmerman, a principal and digital transformation expert. David has a front row seat to what goes wrong in ERP programs again and again, and more importantly, what changes outcomes when quality, automation, and testing are treated as a strategic capability, not as a final checkpoint. In this conversation, we'll unpack why test later is often the most expensive ERP decision, how to survive cloud updates after go live, and where AI adds real value, plus the guardrails needed to keep it safe and trusted. David and Opkey, welcome to the ERP Perspective. Great to have you on the show. Good afternoon, David, and welcome to the ERP Perspective. How are you doing today?
Good, George. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Really exciting episode. First, it would be great to hear about yourself and obviously Opkey and what you guys do. So who is David Zimmerman and what is Opkey about?
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, George. Yep. So my name's David Zimmerman. I'm a principal in Opkey. I lead our pre-sales team, and I have an interesting role where I'm involved strategically and from a product perspective. Got my hands kind of in there on ideating on how we're best serving customers and partners, as well as go-to-market strategy, working with marketing and sales. And then I lead a team who does demos and proof of concepts to all of our different sales channels. So kind of sitting between the different groups. So it's really fun and exciting to be able to work with everyone at Opkey. Just to share a bit about my background. So I've been at Opkey for a year, but I came from consulting. So I spent over 17 years in consulting. Over a decade was spent focused on Oracle Cloud, transformations, kind of started in delivery, went to project management, then more practice level, and then went into more pre-sales at different firms. That experience has really translated well to Opkey, since what we're solving at Opkey for both customers and partners is how can we bring automation and AI to lower the total cost of ownership of these enterprise applications, increase the return on investment, and really streamline how all these manual tasks that have plagued these large, massive systems for a long time. And it's long overdue. And this is something that me and the team I work with who came over this last year are very passionate about, since we lived in that space for so long and saw those inefficiencies really plaguing both partners and customers.
Was that the key part that made you want to join Opkey and help them with this mission?
Yeah. And it's, in my last role at consulting, it was, I was cranking out 3 to 4 proposals a week, really doing staffing plans and kind of working with, how are we going to go onshore, offshore? How are we going to get the price right? And then working with customers to try to fit in their budget. And implementation costs are, the biggest cost when you go in to buy these enterprise systems. Usually they're 3x typically, or even more of the SKUs or the bill of materials that a customer is paying for. And that's a shock to a lot of customers. And again, we hear of AI in our personal lives. We're using all these LLMs. We know they're starting to get into businesses and how they operate. And it's just been long overdue. And so I was always looking for a lever. How can we significantly lower timelines? How can we make this more efficient, but at the same time, not add risk? Because when you do it manually, you tighten things up, you're putting risk on your team and on the customer's success. So it was always this game that we were playing and trying to walk that tightrope. And now this is an opportunity to make a significant impact in the way delivery is done. And this is going to help, partners, customers, but also the vendors. You think of Oracle, Workday, and any other enterprise software out there, it's going to help them because they're looking to have a better cost of implementation, because that all then gets added into that total cost of ownership that CIOs and CTOs are analyzing.
100%. That brings us on to the topic of discussion. You mentioned de-risking these implementations, especially while sort of integrating that AI function. And I know previously when we're planning this episode, what's going to really resonate with the audience, and that de-risk part is
Mm.
continuous testing, because
Yeah.
I know one of the titles we were playing with for this episode is automation first, but
Mm.
why ERP projects fail without that continuous testing, but not just before or during, but also after go live. Why do you think that's so important?
Yeah, yeah. And if I could, as I lead into that question, I just want to give a bit of a background on Opkey so you can kind of understand where we're coming from and how we're helping, and then I'll get right into that. Opkey's been around for over 10 years, and we started as a testing, so a no-code test automation solution, and it's software agnostics. It could, as long as there's a front-end UI and API calls, we can test it. So it could be mobile, desktop, web, mainframe, I mean, on-prem, cloud, custom apps, integrations, even we can even log into emails and transact into emails. So that's a very powerful thing for our customers, because it's, when you think of each customer's tech stack, they don't just have one technology, they have a slew of technologies. And when it comes to testing, it's, you can't just do it in a silo. You've got to think, customers think about their process, and is my process, am I operating the way I need to? So Opkey can cover all of that. And in the past 3 years, we've had a laser focus on more of these enterprise applications that have high demand, and how do we bring more advanced capabilities and partner with them. So we have deep partnerships with several of these large enterprise applications like Oracle, Workday, Coupa, Viva, and others. But again, we're software agnostic. So it could be Salesforce, it could be ServiceNow, it could be a custom app, it could be on-prem. And so again, that just gives us the breadth to help our customers, which they really appreciate. So to come back to your question on the importance of testing from implementation all the way through, right? Through cutover, through operate, and then on into the future. Testing is the number one thing. If you shortcut that, it's going to be to the detriment of a project. It's very taxing on customers. When you do it manually, you're having to get everyone in a room and just knock out all these test cases, and then you're having to iterate that over and over and over again, right? Through sprints or CRP, or sit cycles or UATs, and it's just this grind. And by the end of a project, customers are very fatigued, and so we're never going to get. There's still value in the human component. So having project teams test it is important. That's never going to go away, because they have to understand the new process. They have to sign off on it and feel confident. But we can start to leverage automation early in the implementation cycle in parallel to do more volume of testing. We could do positive and negative testing. That's something we've always talked about in consulting, but you just don't have time to do all of that. And then get into some advanced scenarios. And then all this is repeatable. So as you get into the later cycles, the customer can determine, you know what, we've done this, we've signed off on it. There's a couple of changes in the next cycle. Let's just let automation do the heavy lifting, and we'll just look at the things that were changed from the last cycle that we need to focus on. So what it allows customers to do is get some time back as you go through the end, and it gives confidence too as you're gearing up for go live, because the nerves start building and anxiety starts building, and then all of those assets, all of that automation just flows into the way you operate. So now you could have 2,000, 4,000 tests in your different suites on the shelf, and you can run these as often as you like. The challenge once you go live, and especially customers coming from on-prem or applications where they were getting upgraded every 5 to 10 years, now they're in the cloud. They're getting quarterly upgrades or biannual upgrades, or different cadences based on the enterprise application. But it's a whole new world, and what they realize is transformation doesn't stop at go live; it keeps going. And there's an inherent risk that if you're not testing enough, your end user is going to find the issue, and number one, it's going to shake up their confidence in the application. You're going to have fire drills, and you're going to be very reactive, because you're praying it's not payroll. Like, are we paying someone? Is our finance process is running? Is it a critical business process? And you're just waiting and hoping something doesn't happen, and then you're reacting to it. With automation, you can comprehensively shake out everything in the system, and you can catch it before the end user, package it up, work internally or work with that vendor to get that fixed. And then you're shifting from reactive to strategic.
Yeah. But so many businesses and so many ERP projects, they leave this testing to such a late stage, or like we'll deal with that later. Why do you think businesses do that and just postpone that sort of testing?
Yeah, it comes down to budget and resourcing, right?
Mm.
And some of it is a lack of maybe awareness or being kind of educated in what are the best practices. And hopefully the SI is doing that and they're seeing that from the implementation, because the implementer has to do it to make sure they're covering their bases, fulfilling their contract and handing it off. But you should be modeling after and have that same rigor. And what you find is it's just it's not just about the system. Once you're live, you're operating a business, right? So you're meeting the needs of your internal business team. You're focused on keeping the lights on in the system, but just operating, meeting your policies and procedures. And it's very easy to have this drift occur where you either don't see the importance of it because of just lack of awareness, or maybe you've gotten away and with no fire drills have happened yet, but it's only a matter of time until that happens. And so, the cost of doing it manually, right? Most companies look at that and they say, I can't hire 3 or 4 more FTEs to have full-time testers. I don't have the budget for that. And so what they end up doing is tapping on the same people that implemented in the project. So people whose day job, they have a day job, full-time job, and saying, hey, before this release, could you just carve out some extra time to test? So it's kind of a burden on those people, number one. Number two, let's say there's 2,000 different processes or transactions in a system. They're probably only testing 100 of them. And if they're doing it, if they're being thoughtful, they're prioritizing what are the things that can't fail. So are we paying people? Are these critical processes working? Can we hire someone? Like if that's failing, we're going to be shut down. But they're not getting to the remainder, the 90 to 80%. Maybe you run a process, because there's processes you run every day, once a week, once a month, and sometimes some that you run once a year. And the question is, do you want to be strategic and make sure all those processes work so you don't have a failure when you get to that stage of running it? And that's where automation can help. Is you're going to be able to fit within your budget. You're going to be able to not have to hire additional headcount, and you're going to be able to give your team time back to focus on their day job. And then instead of running it, let's say for each release, if it's quarterly or biannually or however often that cadence is, you can run it even more often. You can run it for patches, because a lot of times patches come in sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly. And you can just put this on a schedule. So the beautiful thing, George, is you could just schedule this to run when you sleep. The agents will pick up these tests, run them when you sleep. You wake up the next day, you have BI analytics and readouts on what happened. And so the power of automation is, why not run it more frequently to just credentialize your system and give you peace of mind? And that's something that what most folks don't realize is if you're not testing enough, you're missing that peace of mind, and you're not doing your due diligence to protect your operational resiliency. And ultimately, there's an inherent risk. And you hit on it at the beginning, right? It's all about risk.
Why does postponing this automation and testing create so much downstream risk? And of course, I know obviously you meant in terms of hiring staff to do this manually, but what is the main risk of just postponing this and leaving it to a last minute task?
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about the way things can go wrong, right? I think that's helpful. So, and again, coming from working with customers for a very long time, all different industries, all different regions around the world, there's things that are in your control and there's things that are out of your control. So, and there's constant change being put into your cloud system, right? You're getting these releases, which we know are changes. The idea is those don't break your system. Some things are being input without your control. Like this is defaulting in, you got to take it. Some are, hey, this is a new feature, you have a choice to turn it on. But they're also doing bug fixes and patching and those kind of things, right? And bugs in a system can happen widespread. Like maybe an enterprise application identifies an issue that's with all their customers. But more of the time, what we see is nuanced bugs and issues that are just to one or a specific subset of customers, and they're more anomalies. So maybe they fix a solution for an issue in another client's environment. That patch brings in an issue in your environment that no one else is experiencing. And so this is an unforeseen bug. Maybe it's an error message gets thrown, a page times out, and there's no way you're going to know that until you execute that process. So the question is, can you afford to have the end user be trying to execute a business process to run your business? Can you afford for them to find that? Number one, first of all, if they need to finish that, how time sensitive is it? Recruiting is all about time to hire, right? Paying people, you can't delay a payment. So those are just some examples, but there's many others. Can you afford to have, some of those have legal impacts, right? And not only that, but then that end user's now shaking their confidence in, oh, the system isn't working as it should. And then you're scrambling. And if that is something you're dependent on the vendor to solve, that could take 2 days, that could take 2 weeks. So can you afford to have that process sitting there and have that delay? When you're testing with automation, you're testing everything at mass and at scale. And now you're able to then go and get that. If you identify a bug or a few of them, you can go to the vendor and say, hey, we got to get these addressed. Now, if that person goes to run the process, you've gotten ahead of that issue and you've vetted it and fixed it before they've seen it. So it's, again, operational resiliency. Can we operate without any issues or roadblocks? And so that's mitigating that risk.
Mhm.
Also, the making sure the end user can do their job and has confidence in the way the system operates.
The risks that you mentioned, I know there are many more, but those risks, they could be fatal to a business or
Yeah,
detrimental to the business's success.
100%.
So yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I know Opkey talks about automation starting before an implementation even begins.
Right.
What does automation first look like in the earlier stages of an ERP project, and how
Yeah.
does it change the outcome?
Yeah, yeah. So just to share some things that are coming that are hot off the press from Opkey, and we started in testing, but what we've done in this past few years, as I mentioned, with these partnerships is, and this is where we're creating our own category, if you will, on the software world, is we're a full platform of agents, and those agents, just to rattle them off here, one of our newer agents. It's a suite of agents. It's called Design Studio, and this is where I'm going to answer your question.
Mhm.
Design Studio, that's early in the sales cycle, leading into your initial design set, design thinking, discovery, starting a project. Then we have PMO agents, so tracking what are people doing, what are the agents doing, how are we reporting this to our customers. We have a configuration agent, which moves configuration through the cycles as you're going through testing cycles and moving it around from environment to environment and doing mock conversion and all this song and dance of this back and forth movement. And then we have testing, which we've been talking about. We have then a training agent and support agent. So we're thinking full life cycle through implementations, and these agents carry over to how you operate. And then optimization. So, are you doing a new phase of work? Are you taking on new modules? Are you doing a merger and acquisition or expanding significantly as a business? So, this is where these agents can help as well. So, they kind of cut across the life cycle of your enterprise app. But to answer your question, so going back to prior to an implementation even starts, this design studio that we've just introduced is allowing our SI partners to engage during the sales cycle when they craft a statement of work. It's an AI co-pilot. So we have a discovery agent, design agent, and a validate deploy agent. And so this studio is a way where you can gather information with AI co-piloting you, develop an SOW, get that. Once that's signed, you've contracted with that customer, those questions in that discovery goes into the design set. Then the architect is working the design set to answer the remaining questions. What are we transforming? What are we going to do differently? Fills that in, and then you can visualize the design. So I typically, George, would whiteboard a lot of this stuff with clients to say, okay, here's the old way, here's the new way, and here's your org structure, for example, something that is very hard to visualize if you just look at a configuration workbook. So we visualize that, and in our design studio, we have a canvas where you can do that, and we've solved all these manual deliverables. So you can export it out, get sign off from customers. They feel more confident in the recommendations. Once we can automatically validate that design, is it going to load in successfully, and then deploy it, and it automatically configures the environment. So a couple things that it's solving there. It's, again, starting early in the cycle. It's saving time. It's reducing error, right? It's co-piloting with the architect. It's giving customers more confidence. And if you looked at an end-to-end implementation timeline, we've just shaved off a couple weeks on the front end. And if I go through all those different agents I mentioned in the suite in our platform, they're all cutting out weeks without adding risk because it's automated. And when you get to the end and you see all the value, it's really condensing those timelines significantly, which increases return on investment for customers because they don't get the ROI till they're live. And from a CIO, CTO perspective, it's reducing the cost and the total cost of ownership of that implementation.
I think it's really important to understand that every point of an ERP project lifecycle, there's a solution, there's a different agent that can help with that. So you mentioned, obviously, from the very start, from a statement of work, your agents can sort of de-risk the project, obviously shaving time off throughout the whole lifecycle.
Yeah.
And I know ERP teams are obviously under pressure to move fast and speed up programs they're working on. But how does automated testing enable speed during the build and configuration phase while still
Yeah.
protecting that sort of critical business processes?
Yeah. Yeah. No, good call out. So it starts back in that design studio that I mentioned, as you're, because this is all manual, right? In the past, go to customers, I often led these phase zero interactions where we've signed up, we're going to work together, we've contracted. Let's get everyone in a conference room. I'm going to just ask you questions, dump everything on me. I'm going to take all these notes. And then I, as an architect, have to formalize like, what does this design look like? What are my recommendations? Then I got to go build the system manually, which takes a lot of time. Then I have to go fill out manual documents, spreadsheets, and deliverables. So that design studio is, again, it's reducing duplication. So it's taking things we know from the SOW. We actually train our AIs. For example, I'm just going to use a couple enterprise applications. So for Oracle Workday, and there's others, we have trained it behind our AI model, which we call Argus. It's our language model, which is proprietary to us, by the way. It's not an open source model. We've trained it on all things related to any public knowledge on these enterprise. So the implementation guides, user guides. So it's trained with the brain of a consultant, essentially. And then we go to this SI, we do a second layer of training, which is on their intellectual property. So what are their best practices for the key industries they support? Because that's a wealth of knowledge that they're bringing to the table. So we do that second layer of training, and then we do a third layer of training, which is loading customer content. So if a customer shared information with us, we train the AI brain with that information. So then when we go in the studio, the AI is recommending, hey, based on all this context, here's what I recommend you should do. And you could say, hey, just fill out the rest for me and I'll review it. Or you could say, you could interact with the AI as you make decisions. And so it's making that experience more streamlined. And then again, you're visualizing it before you load it in. So when you manually configure, you go back to customer and show them, you got to make changes. So there's a bit of a mess that happens because there's iterations. So this is preventing as many iterations. And then we automatically configure. So our agent will actually validate, is the field character limited? Is it a date field? Is there a list of values? And it pulls that in and validates the design set. So that it's going to load successfully, and you just click deploy, and it goes and it configures automatically the system. And as it configures, it does a unit test. So it'll configure a setup page. Our testing agent goes back and validates, did that setup, is it one-to-one with the configuration set? Mm-hmm. So you've taken away all that manual work, right? So that's the front end. And then there's a huge manual grind of configuration where if you have 3 CRPs and 2 sit cycles in a UAT, right? So 6 cycles, you're going to be jumping from 6 environments, because what you do is you wipe an environment, you reconfigure it clean, you test it again. You wipe an environment, you configure it clean, you test it again. And so there's risk of human error, a credible amount of time spent doing that. And so our config agent, as you go through, once the design is complete, literally just, you could say export configuration from environment to this environment, and it will automatically configure. So reducing human error, it does it much faster. And that's where we're saving time. And then you give customers more confidence, because when you get into the next testing cycle, you don't hit an issue where you find, oh, we made a mistake in our configuration. Yeah. So it's building confidence, it's removing risk, and it's increasing that speed to value.
That part as well, where you can choose how much automation is taking place as well, instead of, especially with that configuration phase, you can do bit by bit. It's not going to do everything for you, and then it's, I've got to review everything. You can do that in stages. That's going to make it easier for the user to do so.
Absolutely.
And I know you mentioned earlier, obviously, regarding everyone going to the cloud and off premise, there's more updates and change never stops. So when you end up going to the cloud, how should organizations think about automation, continuous testing after go live to stay stable through those quarterly updates, integrations, and obviously process changes?
Yeah. I think it's just more is better than less, right? And that's where I feel like we have to educate customers a little bit if they haven't had a fire drill, because the question is, can you afford that? And I know a lot of customers we've talked to, there's always this return on investment component of how much effort is it to test manually and the cost of that versus automation. So that's a clear kind of cost comparison. But we've had many customers say, look, I don't even care about that cost piece. It's the risk factor. And if there is any element of risk, we can't afford that. So I feel like it's our duty, and me coming from a background in consulting and having a heart for advising, is to first just bring that awareness. Can you afford to have these failures in your business and your operations? And the answer is never, yeah, we're okay with that. It always comes down to cost and budget and resourcing. So my feedback is, testing automation has been around for a long time. It's not a new thing, right? Customers need to start incorporating that. And again, the way Opkey helps is, one of our advanced capabilities in testing is called discovery. So what we can do is we plug in our test agent. It will actually read the environment. It pulls out the design, and it says, based on your design, we're going to map test cases to it. So in these different enterprise applications, we have what we call accelerators, but they're basically repositories of pre-built test cases. Again, it's all no code. And so what we answer the first question is, how do I know I'm testing enough? Because even today, manually, they don't know that answer. So we'll say, okay, based on your design, you need 1,500 test cases. And this covers all your modules, your processes. And then another thing we do is we pull down data sets. So we say, here's the transactions you've been doing in the system. Here's the real world scenarios you're executing. And then here's also additional ways you could test this test case. So let's say it's hiring someone. There's probably 30 ways you could hire someone. Is it a full-time employee, part-time? Are they a contingent worker, right? And it's going to list out all these different data permutations, and you simply just check the box. Yep, want to do all that. It flows into the data sheet, and now you have automated tests. So what we've do for customers is we take away this burden or barrier where they say, oh man, we're doing it manually. It's going to be an effort to, get into a technology to set up this automation to get to that value. Well, Opkey's really helped shortcut and streamline that. So they feel confident, okay, we're going to be testing way more than we were manually. It's going to be very repeatable. And we're going to get to that automation extremely quickly. So again, I feel like we're at an exciting time where that barrier is being lifted. So there really is no reason why a customer, from a cost perspective, from a risk perspective, should continue to do it manually.
I know we've spoken about Opkey uses AI and sort of agentic automation to accelerate, obviously, ERP testing and lifecycle optimization. But I think the main question for the audience watching is what guardrails are sort of essential to keep automation safe and trusted, because I think everyone wants to use AI, but doesn't know how safe or what the guardrails are. So how does Opkey tackle that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, we encounter customers in different industries specifically where some are really leaning into AI, some customers in specifically like financial industries, public sector. And we have customers in all these industries, by the way, who are hesitant because there's a lot of bureaucracy, or let's say haven't come up with the governance yet to feel confident. And I think that's a serious. I've done a lot of presentations and webinars on this topic because we do need to catch up on the governance and the confidence, so we're not neglecting these capabilities. But just to put out right, we're very thoughtful in where we use AI. And AI is kind of a broad term. I would just say, so in our different agents, if you think about a large language model, we all know there's this concept of hallucinations, right? There's a margin of inaccuracy of its output. But if you go down to different types of more kind of fundamental pieces of automation that may not be necessarily AI, like machine learning, for example, there is more control on the accuracy of the output. So these different agents, so testing agent, for example, is primarily machine learning, advanced machine learning. And that makes sure we can tell our customers, look, there's not a risk of hallucinations. It's going to do its job 100% of the time. And then, we have advanced IWA, what we call, which is a type of RPA. We're always looking at what is the best technology to solve this, and AI might not always be the answer, like a small language model or large language model. So, and then we're thoughtful to put maybe AI is helpful if you want to ask a question about, hey, what was the most failed test case in the last month? Or you're inquiring and you want to get information. So we've been very thoughtful. I think that's number one. And more AI is coming in, but in a thoughtful way. And we also give controls to turn it off. So let's say a customer says, look, we just can't have that. Okay, cool. Like we can disable those capabilities. So it's more, again, machine learning or advanced automation to meet their policies and procedures. And so that's one piece of it. And I would just share a critical piece on, we do have LLM. That's our own proprietary LLM I mentioned, called Argus. We do a lot of benchmarking against other models for performance. From an accuracy and a bias perspective, we do a lot of testing. I won't get too technical, but we have different mechanisms for testing that to make sure it's only answering questions in the context of an enterprise app. It's not answering something that's going to be offensive or bias or kind of going off, because with AI, you could ask it anything. So there's a lot of guardrails, a lot of testing, and a lot of thought that goes into that. And then we're obviously continuing to monitor that.
I think it's very important to have that tailored approach, because different businesses in different sectors have different policies and need a different sort of product for what they're looking to achieve. So I think it's fantastic that Opkey can tailor that to the industry, to the business, and fit into any organization and any ERP system.
Absolutely.
And I know you've seen sort of countless ERP programs, obviously your background being from sort of Oracle, Workday, and now Opkey. What are the most sort of common mistakes teams make around testing and automation?
So let's talk implementation. I mean, I think this goes for both SIs and, because it can be on both the sides, right? SIs and the customer. The failure point could be on either side. And So that's why, we're better equipping SIs, and they see the value in this, but as well as customers. And a big pitfall I see is, when you have tight budgets, when you have limited kind of resources, you can very easily start to cut things out, right? And one of the things that I see most cut out of an implementation or kind of building in and transforming through an enterprise application is change management. So that's the first one I see. They're like, oh, we got to get the cost down. Let's just cut out training and cut out communication. And that's always to the detriment of an implementation, because you've got, they say that an end user adopts a system within 60 seconds. I mean, if you think about our apps on our phone, right? I mean, you immediately make a decision if you like it or not. So if you think about, you're doing a year or more of work to have a 60-second go live where they like it or they don't. And a lot of that comes to, how are we communicating it? Do we have change champions? Are we training? Do we have job aids and user guides? And so we're helping relieve that with our training agent. When you execute test cases, our training agent is AI generated. And this is where AI does come in. It automatically builds job aids for every test case. So every business process, and it makes it much more cost effective. So that's taking away this burden of, well, we don't have the money for that. Well, this is going to be a very cheap and effective way to have robust training. And the beauty too is, as you get most change management, when you go live a couple releases after, it's all stale and no one uses it again. Our guides will self-heal and take new screenshots of the steps. And if the UI changes, it's all fresh guides every release. So it's ongoing change management, which is amazing that we've achieved that, and we're at that place. So change management's one. I would say the other one is testing is a big one. And I've seen even more as, enterprise applications really initially started with Fortune 500 companies. You had mid-market companies and other more small growth companies coming into the picture. But what we're seeing now is 80% of the Fortune 500 are on cloud. So it's going down market. And what that means is, these expensive implementations, SIs are having to be very creative. And that's why they're needing this type of automation. But what I've seen is a lot of these programs where they're almost putting the testing on the customer. They're saying, look, we can get a better price for you, but you have to own testing. And that's honestly, I think customers might be sold that, but it's a very scary thing, because they're not doing it back to back. They don't have the best practices and the way to manage testing cycles. And if you don't test properly, you're not going to be confident. You're not going to have adoption. You're not going to understand the way it's going to work. And it's going to, when you get to that boiling point at the end of a project, the anxiety is going to be at the max level. So this is, again, a way where automation can relieve that pressure of, we don't have enough resources to test, or the project's too expensive, we need to cut something out. Because each of these pieces, whether it's the design thinking, the configuration, the testing, the training, they're all so important, George. And that's really where we're trying to help.
An important part that, when you mentioned regarding the testings, and system integrators want to, give that testing to the customer or to the business, is that shifting of risk as well. Because if you're doing that all internally, you think, oh, it'll be cheaper if we do it internally. And then the internal team maybe don't do it to the right standard. They miss on that big part, of human error that you mentioned, which can be massive. Because if these new responsibilities get put onto a consultant or a solution architect or someone in the business, and they've already got so much work to do, it's very easy to have that human error, because it's saying, I'll try and do this task quickly because I've got so much other work to do. It's a massive part. So I do think Opkey have a massive part to play in the next couple of years and within the ERP community. And I genuinely think it could be a business to watch. The ERP perspective, we always like to watch these businesses grow and what the next generation looks like in ERP. So I'd highly recommend the viewers watching this video to follow Opkey. I'll link David's profile below and the page to Opkey, because I know you have some really exciting things planned. And that brings me on to the final question. If you could redesign how every ERP program approaches quality, risk, and automation from day one, what would that model look like, and how does Opkey help organizations get there?
Yeah. And that's a exciting and fun question. And honestly, that's what drove me and a couple of my colleagues who came from consulting over to Opkey. And again, Opkey made a huge investment. I mean, if you find most of these niche players out there who are solving some of the automation, and there's not really anyone else who has a platform like this, but there's testing, there's configure, some other players. They haven't invested to bring in folks who've been doing this for a long time. So our passion when we came in is not just total cost of ownership, ROI, again, partners, but also customers and the vendor, because it's driving down cost and making it more cost effective. But it's to take us to the third horizon, if you will, of implementation methodologies and also the way you operate, the methodology of how you operate too. So we'll start with implementation. Over the years it was waterfall, and then it went to hybrid agile. This whole like agile thing was really coming into play, but you can't be full agile. It's more of a DevOps thing, but you could do some hybrid agile approach. And it was really just a facelift. It's just different names and slightly tweaks to an old way of doing things. So with automation, and we have a couple partners who are doing this right now, who are taking all of our agents and they are taking 6 months and they are rewriting their entire methodology. They are rewriting the cycles that they're going to go through, how many iterations of that, the staffing models, how they're doing all this. So it's not just Opkey enabling that partner, it's their vision to completely change and to take us to the next evolution of whatever that may be. And each partner might do it a little differently. And so it's exciting that we're a part of that journey because I've always desired to do that in a consulting firm, but never had the opportunity to. So what I think, to your point, the next 2 or 3 years, there's a critical role we play. What we're going to see in the next, I would even say in the next year, from some key partners, and it's going to, once they make this change, everyone else is going to have to catch up, because if they're coming in 30 to 40% cheaper, no one's going to be able to compete with them, or they won't make profit. So this evolution, to your point of methodology, is going to get to a place, and I can't really craft that out now, but it is incorporating, and we all know this, right? We know AI is going to be working more with humans, and we know it's coming into every industry. I mean, it's just a fact. I don't like to think of it replacing. There may be some of that, and there may be some new jobs that are created, but I think there's a lot of this co-piloting that's going to happen to amplify our effectiveness. And so that's what's happening in the consulting world and the services world, is these AI agents being co-pilots and being integrated into the staffing model with a whole new way of thinking of delivery. So, George, I'd love to come back and talk to you in the future as this unfolds. But, that's something that is happening now, and we're going to start to see that come to fruition very soon. And I think then, customers need to be thinking how they operate when they're live, right? And typically customers have felt a dependency on managed services. Listen, automation at this point, and maybe AI will get there, is advisory is still important, right? You're going to need someone who's a deep subject matter expert. If you're thinking about, hey, we're scaling our business, or hey, we're turning on a new module, what do we not know? And they have not only experience of that enterprise app, but they have experience on failures, or what someone else did right, what someone else did wrong, and then also industry specific, nuances to their experience. AI might get there. We all know AI is going to get pretty smart and pretty intelligent pretty quickly. But so managed services will always be there, but the customers should be thinking, how can I incorporate not just testing, but how about ongoing training? So when we onboard people, if we have attrition, it's easier to adopt. We have more accuracy in executing our processes, and taking on, again, more of this platform approach. So they drive costs down for their managing these systems, but also give their team time back, so they can focus on running the business. So hopefully that answers your question. I think this will unfold, and there'll be a lot more to share in the coming months, but it's an exciting time, and we're going to see this evolution happen very quickly.
The conversations I've had with other members at Opkey, the plan you've got, I know we can't discuss it right now because it's in sort of the pipeline, but it is really exciting. I've had the opportunity to have those discussions, and I'm really excited for what Opkey is bringing to the ERP community.
Absolutely.
You mentioned about those AI agents. The last episode of the ERP Perspective, we had an interim CIO on, and he was talking around how these AI agents are going to work within teams, and people are going to have colleagues, let's say, that are AI agents, and help them optimize their workflows and really make them more effective. So I think it's going to be that cross collaboration between individuals who have that industry knowledge, and also the AI agents who they can educate but also utilize to make their daily work more efficient.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And if you think from let's take it in the context of a partner, it allows them to be truly advisors and be consultative, right? So instead of the grind of just manual documentation, spreadsheets, manually configuring, this grind that is just honestly is very tough in that industry, it's going to solve that, and it's going to elevate the folks who are in that services role. And then for customers, again, it's going to let them do their day job and not have to put this burden on their team. And again, they're not even being comprehensive enough, whether it's testing or training or these other things. And it's going to solve a lot of that to make it a better experience at a lower cost. So yeah, I think you hit it spot on. It's not replacing, it's co-piloting, but it's something that's long overdue. And, I think it's something that's going to help a lot of people.
Well, that's been David Zimmerman from Opkey. Anything else that you'd like to get to the audience, or you're happy to round up this episode?
Yeah, I would just say, you hit it. If anyone wants to reach out, I'm happy to chat. Feel free to reach out to me directly. If you want to see any demonstrations of our product, reach out. I have my team can do that. So would love to share more if anyone's interested. And I'm open to connect. Love to connect in the different enterprise application spaces and love to share knowledge. So if you're interested in having a chat, reach out.
Fantastic. I'll link everything below, David's profile, Opkey, so you guys can take a look at that from the comments. And this has been the ERP Perspective and Opkey.
Thanks, George.